Patisserie Luce is a boutique bakery specializing in making cakes and desserts that are refined, timeless, and enchanting. Thank you so much for your time, Giana. Tell us about Patisserie Luce.
Well, so I started Patisserie Luce about a year after my son is born. So his name is Luciano. So it means light, and that's the inspiration for Luce. And at that time, my background is completely different from baking or anything like that. So I was in hospitality and in business, and I've never thought of going into baking. But um, during the time when we were trying to conceive Luciano, it was quite difficult for us. So we went through a long journey of infertility, and we've prayed and prayed for this baby, and finally Luciano came. We were so happy. But I remember 6 months into it, I felt like something's missing. And I was surprised because I didn't, this is what I was dreaming for. And I'm here. Why am I still unfulfilled? And that was the question that I asked myself. So, okay, why am I still unfulfilled? The day when I die, when I look back into my memories, what would I wanted to see? And I remember thinking I really wanted to start something of my own. And work really hard at it, and to use my skills and talents. It doesn't need to make me a billionaire. That's not the point. But the point is to work hard at it and having something that I can be proud of. And then at that point onwards, it was easy because I know my talent lies in baking. So then that's how it got all started.
And I really appreciate you sharing, your story, like, your real personal struggles around infertility. And,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
really, you know, it's been amazing to follow your journey. We met baking. Well, I wasn't baking. You were baking the donuts at Munchies,
Yeah.
a cafe, ice cream
Yeah.
donut shop in Hong Kong. And since we met
Yeah.
then, you've had two beautiful kids. So, um, and you mentioned, as you spoke about Patisserie Luce, you mentioned the concept, the Japanese concept of ikigai, and how
Mhm.
like if you live your destiny and do what you're meant to do, then like life doors open out for you. So I'd love to hear like your perspective of kind of chasing that dream. Like, was it evident to you when you mentioned you thought about, okay, if I were at my deathbed right now, like what would I regret, not doing? Like, I was baking like that obvious path for you?
Well, okay, so maybe I explain a little bit about what Inkigai means. So it's basically a Japanese concept of lifelong happiness. And the way you attain it is when you're living your life's purpose. And life purpose, as it defines, is doing that one thing that you love, that you're good at, that the world needs, and that they will pay you for it. And as I've mentioned, when I asked myself at that point in life, why am I unfulfilled? I guess I was unfulfilled because I was not living my life's purpose. And as I explore that question, I was looking for my life's purpose. And at that time, then it was evident to me that I need to do what I love. So I know that my love was in baking. I might not have the skills yet because the skills takes times to develop, but the passion is there. So then that's how it got started. And funny enough, I think we've chatted about it that I believe that when you're living your life's purpose, then the universe just it really tries to open doors for you and helps you to achieve that as long as you work hard at it. And that's how I felt. And because I remember, I really started from nothing. I didn't really have proper professional training. But I remember I tell myself, okay, so every week I'll bake one cake to build up my portfolio. So in 10 weeks, then I'll have 10 cakes. And once I have that 10 cakes, then I can start my social media, my website. And then it's just step by step, baby steps. And then after I started my website, then my friends who were really supportive, they started ordering from me, and then the rest is history. Because when they order a cake, then it's word of mouth, right? Their friends ask, "Where did you order this cake?" And then it start to blossom then onwards. I hope I answered your question.
You definitely
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and you mentioned hard work and taking it step by step to get to where you are. Could you tell us about your business right now, your direct business, your B2B business, and what does your typical week look like? What types of cakes are you creating?
Yes. So when patisserie started out, I specialized more on kids cakes. But now at this point, now I'm 7 years into it. I have found my own style and I know what I'm good at. So I do mostly private clients. So it could be wedding cakes, it could be event cakes like birthdays or bridal shower, baby shower, things like that. And on top of it, it actually happened quite organically because my friend started, it was her dream to start a cafe. And, as a support, I suggested that I could share some of my cakes with her so she could have some of my cakes in her cafe. So that's, now I do like probably 2 to 3 times weekly where I share my creations with her. And that gives me a great platform as well because I don't own a shop myself, but then if people wants to try my creation, then they have a proper shop that they can physical shop that they can visit to try my cakes without before ordering from me. So that's my business structure right now. And in terms of my typical week, because I'm also a full-time mom, um, it's just really busy. I mean, it's my business is or my baking is just intertwined with my day. So in the morning, I wake up every morning at 5:30. I get the kids ready for school, and then I send the kids to school. And then when the kids are at school, then I start my baking, or I do some social media work or administrative work, and then I pick my kids back, and then it was looking after them, playing with them, and then after a while, then I get back to the baking. So, and then when
It's
then
crazy.
put them to sleep, and after sleep, then I probably work on my social media. So my whole day is the times are chopped up. I often have this discussion with my husband, and I said, "Oh, you're so lucky that when you're at work, when you're in your office, you can completely focus. But for me, well, I guess this is what women do, right? We're quite good at multitasking. So, so my times are all chopped up. So it's quite hard in that sense when you work from home because you can't really focus 100%. It's difficult, but I think ultimately because this is my passion, I get used to it and I just work it. I think to myself it's a challenge and it's a training. And the day when my kids, are out of home, then I will be able to probably do it and probably even better than I do now because I'm trained to do it with such limited resources at the moment.
How do you keep yourself like motivated, or do you like, because I think when you really love something and you're doing it, it's easy to get like a little bit obsessive. And I wonder like what your relationship is with your bakings.
I think as an entrepreneur who has a strong passion in something, I think that fire of passion, it's something that you need to guard it with your life, and it's so important that you don't let that extinguish and you nurture it. So the way how I nurture my passion is, um well, first of all, I love doing what I do, but it's important to not
Yeah.
burn out because when you burn out, you just feel like, oh, you're so lethargic and you just don't want to do it, right? So I think in terms of the business level, you can't be too greedy.
Mm.
You take in as many as you can without burning out, um, and also like making sure that whatever that I do, like whatever cakes that I do or whatever orders that I do, I try to pick those that I really enjoy doing. That it's not something that for example, if someone comes and asks me to make a cake of Minecraft or something like that, it's not my passion. I
Mm.
can do it, but do I love doing a Minecraft cake? No. So then probably I would say no to it, or probably I take one of these orders and leave the 9 other orders to do something that I love, so that I can nurture that passion. And on top of that, I think I don't know, like I make sure that every day when I work, it's not all boring. Like for example, sometimes when you make the same cakes 10 times in a
Mhm.
week, it's boring, right? But I enjoy reading recipes. I enjoy looking through social media for inspiration and stuff like that. So I make time for it, that I do that. So I still feel like I'm passionate about it and I want to do it. I think that is very, very important. Because ultimately, when you're like, for me, for my business structure, because it's just me, there's no one pushing me behind. You say, oh, Jana, it's time to
Yeah.
bake. You need to do this. There's no one. It's just me, right? So I need to make sure that I have the discipline and the motivation and the passion to keep it going. So that's just how I do it. I just need to make sure that whatever I do, that perhaps at least 50% is something that I love, to keep that passion going and that motivation going.
I'm curious, like you mentioned that it's not like you have like a big win behind your back saying, hey, Jonna, like this needs to happen, or it has to come from you. And so do you feel that like you're surrounded by people who are kind of entrepreneurial, or do you sometimes feel like, oh, like, am I like going nuts? Like, why am I working this hard? Like, because I don't know, I sometimes like think about um, just like working on my different projects. I think when I share my projects with my friends, I realize that a lot of people have different creative projects and dreams that they are like actively developing and working on. But sometimes, like, the large masses of people are trying to like get by and like do life
Mm.
and just kind of go with the
Yeah.
waves and just live a good life. And so, um, yeah,
Mm.
what are
Mm.
your thoughts about that?
Funny enough, I think one of the questions during preparation that you sent me was, have I always been wanted to be an entrepreneur? And was it in me? And actually, it's not. Like I'm the most risk averse person. My parents are both just normal workers that work their way in their corporate life, and I thought, I took business in university, and I was expecting myself to just follow that path. And at the beginning, the people, all my friends are employees, like, and it's funny how as I slowly shift towards entrepreneurship, um, that I found that the crowd that I'm attracted to and the friends that I start to hang out with are now more towards entrepreneurials, right? I guess it's just the energy. Like if you are interested in starting your own business, in creating something, then naturally you're drawn to a different crowd. Um, so I would say that right now, at this point, I have a good balance of, I have friends who are entrepreneurs and I have friends who are also employees, right? Um, yeah, yes,
Yeah. Um,
yeah.
Tell us a little bit about like, you mentioned like, oh, a Minecraft cake. While you would be able to create that and make somebody, a little kid happy, that that's not like your immediate preference, and it sounds like you'd probably say no to that project. So I'm curious, like, could you tell us a little bit more about your style and how you have thought through the challenge of like your art and your style versus like different requests that you get for children's cakes and maybe myriad like wedding cakes and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So I think that, when your business is young and you're very early into it, you don't get the privilege to say no all the time. First of all, because you want to make money, right? You want to grow the business. And more importantly, you want to grow yourself. You want those skills needs to be practiced. You need to keep baking cakes to be good at it. So in the beginning, there's no so much focus in style, but more like I need to get business. So if someone asks me to do something, I'll say yes, I'll do it. Um, but as time goes on, you notice what you're good at doing and what you're not so good at doing, and what you enjoy doing and what you're not enjoying so much doing. And so throughout this process, I realized that my style is quite minimalistic. I don't really enjoy making cartoonish things, but more nature inspired, like flowers and herbs and using edible flowers and things like that. So slowly I lean towards that, and then I guess I tap into a different group of audience. So now at this point, where I have, a solid foundation of customer base and things like that, then, you know, I do say no, but I don't say no with an arrogant tone, but I say no as in, if someone comes to me and say, can you make a Minecraft cake? I would say to her, I can do it, but this is not my style. I encourage you to look through my portfolio to see what I can offer and what I'm good at offering. Otherwise, I would recommend probably a different baker for her. Because it's better for both of us, because then she gets her needs met, and while I get to do things that I enjoy. But I want to remain flexible. So once in a while, when I get some requests where like, I'm not quite sure, but I would take it, because I think it's also important to not be rigid, and sometimes to step out of your comfort zone and see, hey, maybe if I make this, maybe I can make a Minecraft cake that is elegant, who knows? But you got to do it and try to know. Um, yeah, but I think in general, it is important to know your brand identity, to know what you stand for. And I think 90% of the time you need to stick to it, because otherwise your portfolio will be all over the place, and there's no synergy or clear identity with your brand. So this is what I think about art and my brand. Mhm.
I think so much of life is like not black and white, and there's conflicting advice that people give, and they're both unfortunately true. And so you
Mhm.
talked about like needing to kind of balance knowing 90% of the time, like knowing your portfolio, and then the other maybe 10% of the time being flexible and trying something different still with your personal brand and being true to your art. Um, I'm curious, like, what are some of the biggest learnings that you've had in dealing with these kind of non-black and white situations while growing your brand and business?
Yeah. Well, I think, one of the biggest learning I have doing these 7 years that I'm into this is that nothing is black and white. I mean, black and white is something that we want to make life easy, to know exactly what to do. But life is it's not like that. And um, I think to be successful, you need to learn to be able to bend without breaking, to be flexible. So some of my learning is like, I don't know, like sometimes it's also knowing, like, that point where you, how should I say this? Like, for example, like, I think it is, it is important to have your style, but leave room for exploration, for something new, and to not be rigid. And for example, it's about finding balance. So about being confident of what you can offer, but humble enough to know that you need to keep learning and not be static. Um, Also, I think one of the biggest thing that I struggle most in my entrepreneurship is taking feedbacks. I guess because my creation is such a personal thing. I guess that happens to all artists. When you cook a meal for someone, or if you make a painting or something, and when someone comment on it, it's very personal. So, you know, in the early days, I remember not daring to ask, like after I've delivered a cake, not daring to ask how did it go. But now I make sure that every single time I deliver the cake, like a day or so after, I message and I say, how was everything? Did the cake went well? Can you give me any feedback so I can continue to improve? I think it's very, very important, because if you want to, if you want to keep growing and to become better, you need feedbacks. And sometimes these feedbacks are not nice. And the trick is, when you get these negative feedbacks, you need to have skill to know that, are these feedbacks productive um or not, because taste with cakes as well, with taste and flavor are subjective. What's sweet to you might be not sweet enough for me. So I listen to these feedbacks. um some feedback, let's say for example, if they say, oh, the strawberries are not fresh, this is fact, because they can be fresh and not fresh. There's no
Mhm.
subjectivity in it. So
Yeah.
these I pick up on. Or, if they comment on, oh, the cake was delivered, but it was melting or something. That is a
Mhm.
fact. So that is something that I can improve on. But it's very, very important to be receptive to feedbacks. And I think it's also one of the way you show your customers that you value them. It's not just, I make a cake, I give it to you, that's it, you ate it, that's not my problem anymore. If you want to have a sustainable relationship with your customer, you need to value their opinion and take them into account. And I think, yeah, so that's what I've been doing. Yeah, so the biggest lesson in this whole 7 years is about finding balance, about, like what I just said, like, and also like, be passionate, be obsessive in honing your craft and aim for perfection. But don't let, my husband always say this to me, don't let perfection be an enemy of good. You know, you don't want to spend all your energy to perfect that one cake while you have like three cakes waiting next to you, and you're not spending equally enough energy on those cakes. So it's a balance, and it's also, it's a sort of wisdom that you gain after a while, to know, okay, and is this perfect enough, is this good enough, is it fine for me to move on? It might not be 110% perfect, but maybe it's 99%. Okay, it's time to move on. So this is something, this sense, this intuition, you need to develop by working at it, with time. It does not happen overnight, I think.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
when do you find the most joy, like in the process? Maybe it just depends on the week, but is it in the like research and experimentation process, or when it all comes together, or maybe if you try something new and you're really happy with the results? Like, what brings you the most joy about like the whole baking process?
I think what brings me the most joy is when I'm experimenting something new, um, and I go into it with a bit of fear, because I'm trying something new. But I go into it, I put my heart at it, I work hard at it to make that maybe a new cake or something with a new flavor. And then it comes out and I look at it and I'm happy with it. I think it's beautiful. I think it tastes wonderful. That is a point where I feel truly, truly satisfied, because I think these cakes are it's an extension of me. The way it represents my vision, my feelings, my beliefs. So being able to produce a cake exactly like my vision is like being able to express myself, and that makes me really, really happy. And that makes me more happy than if customer come to me and say, I really love your cake. Of course that makes me happy, but I am truly happy that my happiness in this whole process does not come from the outside. It comes from me being truly fulfilled when I create something beautiful. Yeah, because I think if you rely on the surrounding to prop you up all the time, then you're not stable. One more, because everyone has their opinion. So if a customer say, I love it, and then the next customer say, I'm not quite sure about it, then your mood is like changing all the time. But if your sense of confidence and reassurance and comes from you, then you're much more steady in the business, I think.
Yeah, I think there's a few things there. I think it's like, I just turned 27, so I'm very young, but I think like which with every year that passes, like you're more certain about like who you are and what you like and what you stand for and all that. And so you
Yeah.
become more steadfast, and like you said, people give you feedback, but it's like it becomes easier and easier to like reduce the amount of time where it's like painful, I feel like, to like hear something random. You're like, you know what, like whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. And it sounds like you're truly like an artist when you speak about like how, you know, you have to listen to your customers, you're growing this business as well, but you don't, the joy that you get most is from that process of trying something new that, you know, made you a little bit unsure, uncomfortable, and being able to execute exactly kind of like the vision you had behind it. And so I'm curious about a few things here. Like, how about do you use you use the word like fear when trying like a new recipe? And so I'm curious, like as you have developed Patisserie Luce, like have you had a lot of moments of fear, and how have you dealt with that?
Yes, I mean, I still deal with fear. I It's very prominent in my journey. This fear, I think, um, the one thing that I struggle most in this journey is probably confidence and imposter syndrome. Like, because I work from home, because I don't have a physical shop, because I didn't have the cordon bleu training that a lot of proper pastry chefs have. I sometimes I feel like, am I legit? You know, am I really good at this? Um, but as as you work your way through, I think when enough people tells you that, hey, actually your cakes are pretty good, and you see it for yourself, then you slowly start to believe in yourself. You slowly start, now I look at my portfolio and I can say, hey, okay, this is not a home baker portfolio,
Let's go. It's
then I have
not.
a bit more,
Yeah.
that, you know, that is, that makes me more confident. And in terms of, other fear, I think fear is not a bad thing. I think every time we push ourselves out of the comfort zone, every time we try something new, there should be fear. It's because it's new, and we should not shy away from fear, but we need to channel it to good. We need to use it as a tool. And so now, like so every week I make a new flavor. Like, I very rarely repeat. So now I have like
Mm.
more than 66 flavors in my portfolio.
That's
And
insane.
every time I try, I'm scared. But I think intrinsically I know that I I need to feel this because I want something new. And that's just part of the game. So I just, okay, and when I make it, you also need to accept that when you're trying something new, you're fearful, there is a chance that you fail. There is. One time I made a new flavor. I had to make the same cake 3 times on the same day to perfect it because I
Wow.
failed the first
That's
2 times.
insane.
So
Yeah.
it's frustrating, and in
Right.
those moments I'm like, see, you're not good enough, right? But this is just me. Like, I would keep doing it until I perfect it. Until I will not accept, you know, in a day. Let's say today I try a new cake. Let's say I tried already 3 times and I still didn't get it. I will not stop and I would not sleep until I get to a point where I got it.
Oh my God.
I don't
Yeah.
know why I'm like that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just like my my pursuit of perfection, and I'm just unwilling to be beaten down, to say you can't do it. Like, I do it. I do, unless I just no sleep, no toilet, no eating. I'm gonna do it until I get there. Um, So yeah, I think so. This is how I deal with fear. I just exposure therapy, basically. I keep doing until I don't feel it anymore. Um, but yeah, fear is, it's normal, and it's not something that we should. It's not something bad. You need it to grow.
Yeah. I think you're kind of, you know, your ability to like be really focused and kind of stubborn and like getting it right and doing all these things, like and that energy just of, yeah, just basically that persistence and like determination and your experimentation probably make you like a great baker and also like an entrepreneur, because I feel like those are like really important like things in growing a
Yes.
business and a brand as well. Um,
Yeah.
have you always been like this, that energy that you have you felt it in other aspects of your life prior to starting Patisserie Luce? You mentioned that you never, as a risk adverse like person, generally speaking, like you never really saw yourself as an entrepreneur. That's not the path, your parents followed. That's just like not how you viewed yourself. Looking back, like at your professional life or maybe other aspects of your life, whether in fitness or, growing a family or, other parts, like, do you think that kind of, entrepreneurial energy was shining through and then now you're able to really channel it and run with it?
Yes, I think I know from very earlier on that I'm quite OCD. Like when I want to do something, I'm quite obsessive about it to make it happen. Um, what can be some examples? Like I remember, so before baking, I was in event planning in the hospitality industry, and with organizing events, you need to be very precise with planning, right? And I remember at that time, a lot of my clients would say to me, "Hey, Jana, your attention to detail is crazy. I mean, like, like you are always at your work, or you're obsessive with your, your Excel files and stuff like that." But at that time, I didn't really take it in. I just thought, okay, this is what I do. Um, and or when I was training for a marathon or something, like that was years ago when I was much younger, I would go to the gym like 3 times a day to run, to train, right? And that was obsessive too. But I guess when I put my mind on something that I really want, I just get very OCD about it. I remember one of my therapists once told me about my OCD. She said that, OCD is actually not a bad thing. It's about how you use it. If you're obsessive about washing your hands, that's not productive. But if you use it at your work, that makes you an excellent worker. And that sticks with me. That I guess you just also need to, no one's perfect, and you need to accept that part of you that is not so nice. That's the OCD part of me. But then I realized, hey, you know what? This part of me helps bring me to where I am in my business, because I'm so obsessive. Because I just need to make sure that tiny little flower on that cake needs to sit perfectly this way, facing this direction. I'm like, my husband think you're insane. Like, who cares? No one sees it. But I said, I see it. But that's an example of how you perceive something that is bad in your personality trait, but actually it when you use it in a different context, it could be, makes you different, and it helps you excel. So yeah, so for sure, I think, if you ask me, have that entrepreneurial spirit, I don't know, like I don't think I never thought I would be an entrepreneur, because I think it was just so much work. Like I want to work at a
Yeah,
job where I
totally.
have a
Yeah.
stable income, where I don't need to worry about I'm going to lose all of my own money, because I work for a company. I just need to slowly climb up and stuff like that. That was always my plan. But I guess when you're doing something that you really love, and that's another interesting thing that I learned, is that you think that perhaps we think that human beings are static, that our personality and our traits never change. If you're an introvert, you will always be an introvert. But that is not true. From my own personal experience, as I've explained, I was very risk averse. I was not. I was never an extrovert. I hate dealing with people. Um, but then now that I'm doing baking, right, I have to deal with people all the time. I have to grow thick skin and ask for feedbacks. Um, I need to be risk averse and try new things, because no customer wants to eat the same cake 365 days a year, right? So then I learned that, hey, you know what? And that's the beauty of life and in human being, is that we are able to change. If you feel like you are a loser one day, no one knows, in 10 years you might be excellent in something. So I think, and that's very encouraging, I think not just to me, but also to other people, knowing that you can change and you can succeed. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I love the advice. The first piece of advice, you kind of shared is like it reminds me of what Claire said actually. Remember Claire from Munchies?
Mhm.
Yeah, so I
Sure.
interviewed Claire. She has a bag brand called Baggy, and she spoke about how essentially, like, as women, we like to think deeply about things and maybe criticize ourselves, and we're able to criticize ourselves, but oftentimes, like, it's like you turn that not so nice thing into a strength. And so Claire mentioned that for her, like, she's turned her impatience into a virtue. Rather than trying to
Yeah.
fix impatience, it actually really helps her drive Baggy forward. And I think you've paired that, so like kind of self-understanding and actually turning those negatives into positives. Because usually when you look at people, it's like the positive and the negative is the same thing. It's like the advice you
Mhm.
get is like, oh, you should improve in this way, Ryan. It's like, okay, but that's like still related to my positive trait. And so it
Yeah.
reminds me of that. But also you're saying that while I guess it's important to like know like kind of your negatives or positives, and basically really work that to your advantage, um, that people are able to change. And so I think as like an entrepreneur, like even working my own like little projects, I feel like the speed at which I learn, I is so fast working on my own thing, because
Mhm.
I'm like a team of one. And before my corporate job, I worked in a startup setting. And it's like even faster than probably my personal learning speed, because that still had teammates. You mentioned like how you really need to nurture that fire within you and make sure it's sustained. Do you have any tips on like what do you do in order to kind of find balance within yourself? And it could be that like you can't always be balanced, like it doesn't have to be that. I'm curious to hear though how you think about um keeping yourself sane as you are a full-time mom and you are also a full-time like entrepreneur. Like what tips would you give
Mhm.
give folks?
I think whenever you start your own business, I hope because of out of passion, not just because of money, it becomes your life because you're so attached to it. So it is you, and as a result, it is important. So if you are the machine that drives this thing, you need to keep yourself well oiled and holistically. And that is, for example, like we've said before, to nurture your passion, making sure that, for example, if I love baking, I should be, sometimes I bake for my kids with no pressure of someone paying me. Just enjoy that process for it is. I think that's one of the way to nurture the passion. Um, Another way, other ways to nurture yourself is you need to look after yourself, and that is, you know, eating the right food. Because if you feel bad, it comes through in the creation, and it's so interesting. Like I always tells my friend, if I'm feeling nervous or I'm rushing or I'm angry, every time my cakes come out, crap. And
That's
so now I've
crazy.
learned that I need to. It's very interesting. So now when I bake, I make sure that I put the music on. I put dedicated time. I make sure that my kids are already at school, not still getting ready, that when they're at school, then I start, um, then I'm in the proper mindset to produce a beautiful cake. Um, so that is eating the right food, you're making sure you get enough sleep, um, and exercising. That for me is very important because I'm also actually a diabetic, crazy enough. So I need to make sure that I'm healthy to be able to try my products, right? So I work out 4 times a week, and during this time, I think exercising is great because not only are you getting fit physically, but your mind, you're trained to be able to tolerate discomfort. And I think that is very important also in life and when you start your own business because there are many, many uncomfortable moments that you have to push through. And that persistence, that actually when I'm training, when I'm training in the gym, then I train to, like, I feel the soreness, like I really don't want to lift, or I really don't want to run, but I must, and I think we've talked about, like, I think, you know with this generation, we focus so much on, you must find your passion, you need to do something that you love, but we don't also remind them that actually, when you do what you love, there are times, many times, when you do something that you don't love. It does not mean that when I start this baking business, the 12 hours that I put into it, all 12 hours, I'm very enjoyable. No, there are times when I have to deal with, like, accounting or things like that I don't enjoy, but that's part of doing what you love. So that when I'm exercising, that is something that I train myself. That persistency, the ability to tolerate discomfort, discipline. When you start your own business, you need to be disciplined. It's different from when you're working in a company. In a company, you have a relatively clear direction and steps. Okay, first you become assistant manager, then you become manager, and probably become a director, and probably 2-3 years apart, right? It's clear. But when you own your own business, there's no map. The map, you create that map. That path, you walk it. So being disciplined is very important, especially in my trade, that I need to make sure that I even if, let's say, I don't have order this week, I need to keep baking to keep the skill alive. I need to make sure I'm not too confident about my creation that I forget to keep reading and keep my pulse on the trends to see what's new, what's the new techniques and things like that. So yeah, these are the ways. And learning to switch off. As an entrepreneur, you don't switch off because it's 24/7. When I get an inquiry, if I get a wedding cake inquiry on a weekend at 10 p.m., I must respond. I'm not going to let her sit for, 2 days. So you don't really switch off in that sense, but you have to put in time where, for example, for me is I try not to work on the weekend. So I schedule all my physical baking during the week, probably a little bit on the weekend if I get a weekend order. But majority of my work, I do it doing Monday to Friday or Monday to Saturday. And the rest of the time, I spend time with my family because, life, it's not just, as much as I'm passionate about it, my business is just one part of my life. There are other parts of our life that we must nurture and we must spend time in. And that is our friendships, and that is, our family. And these things, it requires energy and your investment. So you need to, if you want your business to be sustainable, you have to make it sustainable. And that is making sure that it's not the whole of your life. You need to have other aspects that is sort of okay, that it all create a synergy and support each other.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. It's like it both has to be your life, but like it can't be the only thing because then you're just gonna feel like shit and like not be able to produce to your like full abilities.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
what advice would you have given yourself at the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey?
I think, when I look back, I think in the beginning I would tell myself that you have a talent, but please work at it. Give your 110% in it, and the rest will follow. You really need to believe in yourself. That would be what I would tell myself in the beginning. That letting go, not worrying so much, and just do it. Um, I think that would be very, very valuable for me in the beginning.
Yeah, the worrying thing is so real. It's like sometimes your brain just has to make something up to like worry about. But yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
really great advice. Gianna, where can the audience find you and how can the audience help you?
Well, they can find me on my Instagram, patisserie.luce. Um, you know, the way they can help me is obviously trying my cakes and giving me feedbacks, or just following me and be part of this journey that I am on. That would be very helpful.
All right, everybody, go follow Giana at patisserie.luce. Patisserie is spelled Patisserie, and then Luce is spelled Luce. Gianna, thank you so much. I admire you a lot. I've been, following your journey online since you got started, some years ago, and I really, really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Well, thank you for interviewing me. It's wonderful to be able to share with you today.